Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 17th Educational Affairs Committee. I will be your chair tonight, Leah Mulhearn. I will call the meeting to order. It is 7:02. Can I please have a roll call starting with Ms. Murphy?
Robin Murphy, present.
Jennifer Loman, present.
Daniel Schultz, present.
Charles Williams, present.
Zachary Epps, present.
Ross Whiting, present.
Pamela Henry, present.
Ms. Blitzstein, are you on?
Mia Blitzstein, present.
Thank you. Leah Mulhearn, present. Thank you, everyone. Can I please have a motion to approve the minutes from the November meeting?
Second.
Murphy, second, Dr. Whiting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Thank you. The motion carries, and we move on to our presentation. We have a number of items this evening, and I will turn it over to Ms. Savage.
Hello and welcome to the week prior to winter break. We are here in the Cheltenham School District, although we will sincerely miss our students as they are not with us over the next few weeks. So again, just settling ourselves in our essence and making sure that we always center our work in both our essence and then also our vision and mission statements. Belonging, becoming, and excelling. I think this has been very relevant this winter season for some of our students. I had the opportunity today to go spend some time with the ladies of distinction over at Cheltenham High School, and they were able to share with me some of their concerns and also some of the highlights, and they were very specific in naming some of their favorite teachers. So that was a pleasure, and it just reminded me that we are here to honor the diversity of our students, but also reminded me personally of my why and my purpose of why I'm here. And thinking too about how the work that we do in the Office of Education every day supports both our vision and our mission as our students are learning to belong, engage, and to seek justice in every way that they need. So we had a really good time over at the high school today. So getting into our agenda for this evening, we do have some guest presenters. We have Dr. Benjamin Hammond, who is our interim principal for Cheltenham High School, and Assistant Principal Mark Hoff. They are going to support us this evening by walking through some secondary course enrollment information. They also will share course proposals for Cheltenham High School and be very specific about what that looks like as we are moving forward. I'll provide an EPIC progress report. I have been spending some time there as well, and we have some fun things to share with you from EPIC. I'll give you a very short academic calendar update and also a short strategic plan update, as the board will receive a full written report related to the strategic plan in January. We will actually start here with our secondary course enrollment overview, and Dr. Hammond is going to come and get us up to speed and share some things around our course enrollment.
Thank you for having me, everybody. So before I begin, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page with some of the terms. So when we're talking about our courses, we will have courses that upgrade at the high school. That's the course itself, the subject that's being taught. But then we have sections, and you'll have courses that have multiple sections. Then you'll have courses that are singletons because there's only one section that's offered in the day throughout the day. So all of that comes into perspective when we're talking about courses that are enrolled under 15. And I say that because of Board Policy 126 that technically says that if a course is under 15, we have the right to not offer or run that course after talking with the board. So in looking at it, it also says it takes place in April. We wanted to share this with you now based on what it looks like currently for this school year. And then after the request season goes through and we are looking at building next year's schedule, we'll have the same conversation with you on what we will possibly not offer for the upcoming school year. So when I shared with all of you the list of courses and what their enrollments look like. According to that board policy 126, I pulled out all special education classes because that's not included in that policy. But I gave everything to you so that you could see it. But I do want to touch upon some of it because looks can be deceiving. And so up first, when I talk about there being AP classes that are on this list, it is very true that some of our AP classes appear to be insufficiently enrolled or under-enrolled up with under 15 students. However, when we look at scheduling our AP courses and maximizing the offerings that we have for students as they're picking their requests, especially with options like Eastern, you could go to AM Eastern, you could go to PM Eastern. If you go to AM Eastern, and some of our upper level classes, like our AP classes, are singletons. And so if you offer it as a singleton, depending on where it is in the schedule, you can't go to that particular section of Eastern. And so typically what we have done is if the enrollment was in a certain range, like let's say it was 20 or 30 kids that are selecting that, 20 or 30 kids could fit in a single section. But if we offered it twice, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, you now maximize students being able to take that course. So while you look at your paper and you'll see that a course is under-enrolled, it's under-enrolled because we want to make sure that we're allowing students to take those options. Same thing with our world language classes. You'll see in the world language classes that certain classes are also insufficiently enrolled. However, as students are moving through that progress, you'll end up with a smaller amount of students that are making it to that level. And so we have continued to offer certain courses for that purpose. And then same thing as we go along in PBL, our numbers in PBL, especially as you get to the 12th grade year, that enrollment has been low. And so when you're looking at the PBL, for example, currently PBL 15, PBL 12 has around 15 kids exactly. It's what experiences are we trying to offer for our students that comes into question. Rose, can you do it? So there are also certain exceptions. Of course, we have our special ed, but in some of our multi-section classes, as well as when it comes to staffing needs. So an example that I put up here when you're looking at that list is French. We have 2 French teachers that teach French. And so when we're filling their schedule, you may offer an additional section that would make it seem as if it's under-enrolled, but you're now putting, instead of a singleton, you're having more opportunities for kids to take that course. And so when you fill out a teacher's schedule to make sure that they are a fully staffed teacher, you could end up with a section or 2 that are under-enrolled. Same thing in our STEM classes, as we've been changing and bringing on our new teachers to teach our STEM classes. We have our advanced and regular structural design and testing class. They look individually as if they are insufficiently enrolled. However, those classes are taught at the same time. And so there are also times in our schedule where teachers are teaching more than one class at the same time because of the numbers. In English, we have a news journalism and journalism class. They combine to make one class. So if you look at them separately, maybe we shouldn't run this, but when they put them together, you're over that 15 threshold. Same thing happens in music, some of our music classes. And it would be unfair again to point out that their classes are under 15 in certain instances because of design of how they want their choirs and bands to practice, they want them all to be together. They choose to have certain classes be 40, 50 kids. And then again, to fill out the rest of their schedule, they'll offer your AP music theory class, which is usually a lower number. You'll offer some guitar classes. We're gonna try to bring back our piano class, digital music production, but they are the fillers that fill into the schedule to fill out that teacher's schedule. Same thing in business. Business was, we've been increasing our enrollment in business. And then we brought back a teacher towards the end of the summer and we had to change up the schedule to put the students in there. But because that wasn't known at the time of requests, it appears as if some of the sections were under enrolled. Same thing is in TV. And then I want to highly point out, if I got to make the definition, I would include our ESL classes in the classification of special education. But because it's not, I enlisted them and I still kept them there for you. But we do share an ESL teacher with Cedarbrook. And so they're servicing Cedarbrook and the high school. And when you look at the ESL classes, that teacher is operating 2 different classes at the same time as well. And then you also have your multi-section courses, which I don't put into the category of being underenrolled, but because it happens, I still have them on the list for you guys. So as you're looking at them and you see a biology class or you see an algebra class or any of our core subject classes, especially any of our graduation requirement core subject classes, you will see that a section or 2 are under enrolled. But that happens as we build the schedule with all the different options that we have, that you'll find that you'll have a section once all the students are loaded in that is lower, that can take on new students as we're coming in. However, if you were to pull that section out, some of those students would not be able to have all their other. So it's a decision that ends up getting made. So what we end up doing at the high school, and why we're going to come back later, is once we have all of the requests, we sit there and we calculate what would be, if this is the number of students wanting this class, how many sections would we create? And what would be the projected size of those sections? And then we make our decisions based on that so that we know that when we build the schedule, we're offering enough sections for the students that have been choosing. And then the sections at that time are low. That's when we make our decisions. We're probably not going to offer this course so that we can offer maybe another section of a different course. Are there any questions? Oh, let me add this last part. Independent studies and dual enrollments, when you see those as 1 kid or 2 kids, independent studies is usually a teacher that sees that a certain kid could not get into their class based on how everything worked out. And so they will allow that student in one of their other periods to take an independent study and sit in on that class and be a part of that class while they're doing multiple things at the same time. So it's more so our teachers being flexible the way we would love them to always be to help our students increase their options.
Mr. Schultz.
2 questions. One is logistics. You mentioned there's a list. Are you saying it will be shared or it has been shared?
It should be in your folder of data.
In the board folder and also
Oh, the shared Google
the
Drive.
shared Google Drive, correct?
Thank you.
You'll just get a list of all of them.
Thanks very much.
I'll make sure I can send it out separately to everyone.
No
just to
problem,
make
and I'm
sure.
sorry I missed that memo. But I'm
Yeah, I don't
glad
think I
asked, 'cause
linked it
now I
in
know
the
what it
email I
was.
sent, but I'll make sure.
And my second question is around, this might be something I think you mentioned in June will be presented. Things that are both under enrolled and maybe are on the list of not having in future. Enrollment is one factor, and then alignment with some sort of strategic, vision for what ideally should be taught is a second factor, because it strikes me that if there was a course that say only had 5 kids in it today, but it was deemed an important course for some reason, there could be things done to try to encourage more enrollment
Mhm.
and therefore hit them. So I just am curious, what is the Do you take that into consideration as you're thinking about these things, not just around teacher scheduling, but also, hey, what's the validity of a given, for instance, AP course, or you mentioned music and this, the STEAM types of things might be more niche, but still valuable. Is that like a factor, or is the policy really the thing driving, the enrollment policy the thing driving some of these things?
I think that all gets factored in. The enrollment, the board policy starts the conversation. But as I pointed out, as I went through this, there's a lot of courses that end up running because of what you just said. There are certain things that we want to still offer and we want to have that experience. I think that part of the conversation that has not been taking place is the fact that we are now in schools moving towards that dual enrollment piece. And I don't think we've really been taking advantage of it the way that we could be. So there are some of our upper level classes that could be dual enrollment instead of running a 5 or 3 section class or three person class. But that's just part of the conversation.
And I have a third I just thought of, which is to make something you said that inspired a thought around ESL.
Mhm.
Should we be updating our policy to include ESL as an explicitly, because we can? It's that.
I think you absolutely can consider that. The reasoning, to my mind, around adjusting the policy is when you think about the end, meaning the number of students that are receiving those services, it might be so insignificant that it will appear when you run these course enrollments that this course is significantly under enrolled,
Right.
particularly depending upon the level of learner that student might actually be. So if they're a beginner versus if they are on a different WIDA level. So I think there's a possibility there that you might want to take a look at that so that it doesn't get conflated into the conversation.
Right. Thank you.
Absolutely. I was also thinking about that, Dan, in terms of updating the policy, is even that policy could be a bit more explicit around the sections.
Right.
You know, where you have you're meeting or exceeding a threshold, but not for each particular class, which allows students to, you know, to participate widely.
And I thought about pulling those out because if the course met the threshold, but I wanted to be fully transparent and give all.
Well, that's good, but you know, I'm glad you kept it in there, but that lets us know because that's not in there. And so you can't necessarily go with the intent of, you know, when that policy decides whether it could take with that policy, but I think it can be clarified. So you all aren't thinking like, are we violating policy or having someone else that says you're violating this policy?
Right. And part of the reason that we ran the list the way we did and delineated it was because we wanted that clarity and that transparency in the policy itself, the language of it from that point in time when it was written, it didn't actually explicitly state that we had to share the size of the sections.
Right.
So when you're looking at the course and then the number of sections that could be expanded underneath of that course, I mean, there are actual financial implications for that as well.
Mhm.
But I think being clear about the why and how it's manifested over time can be helpful to the entire group.
Thank you. I get this one.
But do you take, when do students at the high school register for next year's courses?
We will be starting that process towards the end of January.
Okay.
And then they start their requests early February. And then that wraps up by the end of February, beginning of March.
Okay, all right, so you'll have all that information.
And then I
before-
take all
yeah.
of that information and then we do our projections so that we can say how many sections of each course we should.
Okay, thank you.
And this is a little different than what we've done in the past because this is actually a twofold process for us now. Previously, you wouldn't see the actual you wouldn't see the full enrollment, you would see the projections in April. We wanted to just make sure that you saw the enrollment as well, particularly prior to us going into budget season. So that there was clarity around the number of sections that are running, the number of courses that we have, and, you know, the teaching staff necessary for that. Principal Hammond will be coming back in April to share the projections as well, because at that point, we'll know which courses will be probably running for next year.
Mr. X?
Thanks. Based on your last comment, I wonder if this question is better for April when some projections are final. Because if I And this sounds like a massive game of Tetris, by the way.
It's kind of
In
is.
many ways. Complicated, yeah. But when, I heard you talking about in cases where there is a low number of students enrolled, for a couple sections, in many cases, the teacher, it's not like we have a teacher teaching only those sections, they're teaching other courses, and then there's like a couple extra sections that they can teach, therefore it's a low number. And so is that like the majority of cases, or is that like all of the cases, or, so I'm wondering, like, because you mentioned financial implications, so I imagine we're not in a case where we have, well, that's one question. Is that most of the situations where we have low numbers and it's because a teacher is kind of, has those extra periods, so to speak, if I'm understanding it correctly?
It's not about the teacher having an extra period. It's about where the course is best placed to maximize all of the students' requests. So once it lays it all out, and then it starts loading kids in, you'll have several kids that need these 5 classes. And then this is the only place that this other class could fit. But there may not be a lot that are in that situation. And so when you lay out, you could move this class to another location and then start condensing and making the other class sections bigger and spreading it out. But then those kids lose what they wanted. And so you leave the class there. And then when new kids come in, you're trying to put into that class as the year goes on, or as maybe it is a second semester class, depending on how it is. That's kind of what happens. Same thing with second semester classes. Now that I mentioned that, you'll also sometimes leave certain second semester classes lower in case you have kids that maybe they need to retake the course that next time. And so the numbers will change as it goes through the year, but again, where we are at the moment, they are under.
And to address the second part of your question, yes, in certain circumstances, we will break sections into smaller sections to satisfy requirements for a teacher schedule. So if we have a teacher, for example, that's certified in math, but we haven't filled that teacher's schedule, we might actually look at an Algebra 1 class, break it in half, because it's best practice.
Yes.
Yeah,
And then
okay,
give a
that's
teacher-
where I was
Yeah.
going. Yeah, okay.
And then give one teacher half of that section, and then the original teacher keep the other half. And just thinking about, the size of the classes and then which classes we do that with. Sometimes that does occur when we're filling schedules of teachers, but looking at which classes we're breaking up.
And that also happens in the reverse. So you'll have 2 teachers having a same class at the same time and they're both low. So then you'll combine all the kids into one and then give that teacher a different class somewhere else that may fit.
Yeah.
Or take away from this person and put it in that spot and then add another course for a different person. Like, it is a game of Tetris.
Yeah, no,
Very complicated.
and so that's why I was like, maybe it's a better April question, because we'll know what we need at that point, because it's not as if we're in a situation where we have course offerings and then like we have to hire a teacher, but then across the sections it's such a low number and we have a teacher just teaching like these low number of courses. That's not the case. We actually have,
So
it's the opposite.
And so
Yeah.
when we are creating, and I'm probably saying too much and I don't want to take too much of your time, but when we are creating those sections, we are looking at the FTEs so that the full-time employees, so that when we have all of them set, we're not going over in any of the departments of what we have for an FTE. So theoretically, we have just the right amount of teachers to offer all of those sections, but in practice, it doesn't always work out beautifully because we don't have, like, every teacher doesn't have their own room. And so if you went in a perfect world and every class ran where it meant to run to be perfect, you might have several classes running on the same time, but we don't have the classrooms for that to happen because so many teachers need to share spaces. And so then when you start mixing and matching and putting everything together, that's when you start to have the overloads and under.
That's helpful to understand.
This is why Dr. Hammond is the scheduling guru.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's not just Tetris, it's like.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's-
But to your point, the financial implications of it, it can get very essentially, because, so it's helpful to understand some of the thinking behind it, because, again, in the diligence that we have, because, it seems like a constantly tracked, and then with our business manager also constantly tracking like where we need to be versus budgeting and everything else, so it's, appreciate some of the understanding.
Absolutely. And I think a good portion of what drives the complexity of this is the number of offerings that we have for our students, because they have access to course content that honestly, some other high school students just don't. Our teachers over time have definitely built out a number of courses, a number of AP offerings, and they have provided opportunities for our children in ways that, you know, some other schools just don't have the capacity or capability to do. So it's definitely a testament to the culture that's been built over time. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hammond. We're moving on to the next.
Unless you want to ask another question.
I guess we should make sure that this listing, there's no questions from the public. We don't have any public members in the room, so, no. All right, great. And we will move on to course proposals. Thank you.
Evening, everyone. Evening. My name is Mark Hoff. I'm proud to be one of the new vice principals of assistant principals of I have presented before this committee before, and I don't believe any of you were at this table. So I am here to talk about a few more of those Tetris pieces we're going to put on the table. And just a little bit about our process before we get there. We ask our teachers, our department chairs every year to think about the courses that would benefit our students the most. What don't we have that we could offer that would really be a value-added situation? They submit proposals, we review those proposals in terms of the impact that they will have on our students, the impact that they will have on our schedules, and the impact that they'll have on our staff. And then every year we come to the table with our recommendations. And so tonight I come to the table with 3 recommendations for this coming school year, and then a 4th that I want to bring to your attention because it's something we want to talk about that would be implemented the following school year. The first one, we don't have a choice on. Thanks to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we have we have a new mandate, and we are going to be adding a financial literacy course to our course catalog effective next year. For the class of 2027, they need to meet this requirement, so our current sophomores. And so we anticipate we're going to make this a junior or senior class because this course is very much focused on real life practical applications. The decisions that, you and I make every day in terms of what we do with our money and our future planning and all, and that's all built into this half credit course. The Commonwealth is providing a series of online resources, so we are hoping that this will be materials neutral. They're doing this both through the PDE website and then SAS, which is that interface that all of the curricular materials and assessment materials from the state provide. Another benefit to the way that the Commonwealth has designed this is that it is designed as an interdisciplinary program. It acknowledges that we have staff in a variety of disciplines that have the ability and bring different things to the table. And so our intention is to design this course with input from our business teachers, our math teachers, and our social studies department. And we are hoping to have staff from all 3 of those departments teach this course. And then that will remain flexible. So as we're looking at how the pieces fit together year to year, we can, balance between departments as we're meeting the needs both for this course and for other courses that we offer. So we are very excited to be bringing that. For those of you who are Cheltenham veterans, we had a version of this course back when we used to require economics. And so we definitely do have some staff members that are very excited to be bringing this back into our portfolio as a required course. It's going to replace an open elective. So just like our health course is an identified graduation requirement, financial literacy will be not in any specific department, but a specific graduation requirement. 0.5, and we're going to, again, make it eligible for juniors. Okay, so that was the state requirement. We're really excited about a course in terms of we generated it, is one that sits right into that belonging, engaging, and seeking justice, vision that we have here in Cheltenham. I was very excited over this school year. We brought in 3 new full-time social studies teachers. And they are adding a lot to our program. And this proposal was generated, from that new energy that we have. So centered in the Learning for Justice Standards, former Teaching Tolerance organization, we are going to take the social justice standards, which we do have within our curriculum system. It is something that we've looked at as we designed like the new US1 course. Social justice standards were part of that process. We're going to use those as an anchor to look at case studies, one aspect, and then, how do students take the actions of the past, plus the way that they're engaging in social media and all to propel things forward, and put them both through case study methodology, and then, what can you design? What can you go do? So we're very excited about bringing this to the table tonight. We are opening this grades 9 through 12. One of the things that we have identified as a need is that we do need to have some more 9th grade electives. So we are looking to have a very lively, very, a good mix of students that are going to be in this class, including our 9th graders. So that was the excited new energy course. Algebra 1 honors. In reviewing the course catalog, the only core course in our catalog does not have an honors course that matches it is Algebra 1. And so as we've thought about the why behind that, we believe that there is a population of students that are grown significantly in grade 8. So these students have not taken algebra in Cedarbrook, but have grown their math skills to where Algebra 1 honors would be appropriate in 9th. And we have students that come into the district as 9th graders who, based on their programming in their middle schools, Algebra 1 honors might be the appropriate place. Now, we are in a process of reviewing our materials for math, when we're looking at our secondary math program. So reflecting about identifying the need, but how do we want to move forward? We do want to consider this not for next school year, but the one after. But we want to bring this to you, seek your approval, so that when we're looking at the resources for our new secondary math program, that this course is in mind as we're picking that, so that it would complete a sequence of having an honors section in Algebra 1, geometry, Algebra 2, pre-calc. And so we feel that this piece is something that we want to complete, but we want it to be part of that review process that we're doing with the entire math sequencing. And so until we want to think about this course as we're doing it. So this is not something that we want to add for next year, because we don't want to just add it. We want it to be part of that spectrum of change that we're anticipating that will happen, not for next school year, but the following school year. Algebra 1 honors. And then the last one is the outcome of hiring a new choral director and having a new math, what term would you use for math?
Music department coordinator.
A new music department coordinator. And so as they're reviewing our K-12 math, K-12 music program, they're looking at, right now at the high school, we have a high voice and a low voice minor option. And the low voice, because of enrollment, hasn't been consistently running. And so when Ms. Selman is looking at how am I going to strengthen the choral program at the high school, what she would like to see is a combined, remove the high voice, low voice, have a combined freshman choir. And then as we talk through this, what we're proposing to do next year, and we might come back to the table and say, well, that may not have been the best idea. But what we're proposing to do for next year is have a freshman choir in the fall, and then put all of the choral students together in a concert choir in the spring. And so they'll get their introduction to music. So it could be people who are currently experiencing choral programming at Cedarbrook, or just like I've never really sung. I'd like to give it a try. Bring them in, give them some foundational pieces, introduce them to the expectations of the high school choral program. Use it as an opportunity for some of our upperclassmen student leaders to also work with these students as they're developing the a cappella groups that we have, and then transition them as a combined choir in the spring. So this would be a new course, a 9th grade choir, but in doing so, we are going to collapse the high voices, the low voices, and approach the program in a different way. So these are the 4 courses that we are proposing for next year. A couple other Tetris pieces, but I think pieces we can handle.
And I just want to clarify around Matt Bernston, he actually is currently the music department chair.
at the high school.
We have also appointed him our K-12 music coordinator.
Oh,
And have been having succinct conversations around what our K-12 music curriculum looks like, what we want the continuum to look like, what is the vision for the program, what does that mean for resources? So I have been engaged with the music department around those conversations and with Mr. Bernston. That's part of where that came.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Hoff, thank you, Ms. Savage, for that, that is very exciting news. Do we have any questions from the board? Dr. Whiting?
Just a comment, my undergrad and master's are in music ed. Co-sign this, this is a great way, like, this is a great way to do a pipeline. Having a unified, especially ninth grade group that can really cohort together and really get some really good sight singing skills together. I'm really glad.
Just wanted to, this is always one of my favorite meetings, because it's so fun to see the two things coming down the line. Social justice and protest movements course is incredibly exciting to see. It also feels like the sort of thing that we would present at BSBA about and try to help more districts learn from what we are doing, because I think it's unique to Cheltenham and our focus on it. And not to get existentially political, but at a time when we see federal messaging in incoming president about not even allowing things like this, I'm glad that we are going to put a stake in the ground and offer this course. So, three cheers for everybody involved.
Second, Mr. Phil's comment, but also to add just looking at our mission and vision and our strategic plan and aligning courses that makes sense for us is always good to see. 4 sections for social justice and protest movements, probably a little light, but I'm excited.
So if I can comment to that, typically when we run a new course, students aren't aware of it. And, some of the things when we look at, how courses roster and why students choose courses, some of it is like, well, can I see who's teaching that course? And so, that it kind of needs to establish itself before it get bigger legs than that.
Yeah, I'm making that statement because it is a part of the fabric of the mission and vision. It is there for a reason. It wasn't the adults who were driving that necessarily, right? We've had some strong student groups who have supported social justice movements in the past, and so I'm encouraged the fact that we're going to be able to cultivate that a little bit more and thinking about how we could grow that. I'm one of the things.
Quick question, but I'll continue the theme here, because I was encouraged that you mentioned the social justice principles or framework is already infused in our US history course. And so you don't have to, it's even better that you don't have to take this course to get some of the principles and framework. Is to your point, when I think about my own life, removing some blinders, right? Some of those things, I'm like, oh, if that happened a little earlier on, things like that. So the opportunity that folks have, again, when we think about our mission and vision within this course, but even students who don't take this course, will even get some inspiration and resources.
When my former job was the social studies department chair at the high school. When we switched from when we went to a 2-year US history sequence instead of a 1-year, what you just pointed at was one of the primary drivers for that decision.
Yeah. With the financial literacy, the teachers, given that they're coming from different departments, so with PLCs, so jumping to a whole different thing, but related, right? So would they have their own PLC, or would that be based on their department or something else, or just thinking of the opportunity there?
PLCs can be based on a lot of different academic needs. And so one of the things that very well could happen with the teachers teaching this class would that they would be, that would be their PLC for this year, but we have to look at a variety of factors when we determine how teachers are going to best grow and how students are going to be best impacted, by the professional learning communities that they.
Yeah, so they could form in this way.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's smart.
Ms. Murphy?
I'm just excited to see the types of courses that probably should have happened when I was in high school. Post-civil rights movement stuff, when it didn't happen, that is finally happening, and hoping that the students who take advantage of these opportunities will exhibit their greatness really fast, because I think they will. The type of student that does this work and is drawn to this is going to be really special. And so the fact that we get to see that happen, I'm excited for what that's going to look like.
I'm gonna build on that too. Perfectly, concisely describe what I was feeling there. We should welcome critical feedback as a result of courses like this as well. I saw in Cedar Brook today, a group of students who had written a different statement on Indigenous peoples based on Thanksgiving. And it wasn't critical of ours, but it was in addition to ours. And so I think if we're gonna teach courses like this, we should welcome the opportunity for students to also be examining the practices of the district that they take a part in and listen to the feedback that they have as a result of it. Because we may have also blinders on, and this could be another way for us to receive.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Blitzstein, anyone in the public that is? Okay. I have one last thing. Again, I think Mr. Schultz said this is always one of my favorite meeting students. It is so exciting to hear, and what I love hearing is where these ideas come from, because they come from teachers looking at what our students need, what they would like. And I think I heard a few times, Mr. Hoff, you talking about it being new staff or new faculty and that's exciting, because seeing what we have in front of us means that the kind of new faculty we have, they get our students and what we would like to see happen. There are no other questions, and we do have a member of the public in the room now. Okay, thank you. We didn't earlier, so I didn't want to ignore you. Thank you.
Not just any.
Not just anything. But thank you so much, Mr. Hoff. Pleasure having you here with us tonight.
Thank you.
All right, we will now move on to an update on the Empowerment Center in Cheltenham.
Yes. Oh, I have a typo there. Empowerment in Cheltenham. Oh, no, I did.
I said it though, at least. Or no, it's the Empowerment in.
Empowerment program.
It's not epic.
It's been a long day.
Empowerment progress in Cheltenham.
Well, I actually am very excited to share just a brief update with you about EPIC and to give you a very short progress report, but also to kind of show you through some pictures and also a video that we gathered at EPIC, how the students actually are feeling about the programming that is occurring there. So just for your edification, we do have some data here. We currently have about 47 students enrolled. It fluctuates a little bit because of the population that EPIC serves, because we actually do take students at EPIC that might be coming from hospitalization stays, mental health placements, and sometimes that creates a fluctuation in numbers because those students may come and stay at EPIC or they may just pass through EPIC. So we're currently working with a couple of families in that realm right now. We have about 3 slots remaining because we did cap it at 50. I think the demand is much greater than that, to be quite honest. But we want to make sure that we are able to appropriately serve all of the students that are at EPIC when they arrive. And we wanted for this first year in particular to keep it at 50 so that we can collect data, we can make sure our programming was correct, and we can make sure that the schedule worked appropriately as well. We do have 1 to 2 seniors who will go back for the second semester, meaning that they have decided that they wanted to rejoin Cheltenham High School larger facility, the actual high school, for the second semester of their senior year. Their reasoning primarily was really to participate in the senior year activities, but they had caught their credits up, so they're good to go. And we also have 12 to 13 students who will graduate from EPIC. And these are students who are participating in the graduation activities at Cheltenham High School in various sort of ways, but have basically told us that they do not want to go back to the high school for various reasons. Some of the students actually just like the smaller environment, the connections that they made to the adults. So there is some success there because these students are getting their credits caught up and they will graduate. After those students graduate, that means we will have approximately 15 to 20 slots for the fall. And that is not including the students that are going to remain because they might be sophomores or juniors right now. But the next step in the process is really to schedule meetings with the school team and their families. And each student will have an individual meeting. We will talk through their progress thus far this year, talk about the plan for the remainder of this year, and then begin to discuss what does next year look like for you, because the intent was not for students to come and stay at Epic and just stay in perpetuity, even though that seems to be what they want to do. But the conversation with the family should be around, like, is it appropriate for your student to return to the high school? And if so, in what capacity? And if not, what does the plan look like? And how can we best support your student towards graduation? So all of that being said, I have a testimonial here. I hope this plays. Oh, can't hear it, can't hear it, can't hear it. Is that me?
You'll, yeah, you mute this.
Should that be up? Okay. So I mute my Zoom, but I don't know that you guys will be able to hear it, but I'll start it over. Can you turn it up on there?
I think it's all here, they won't hear it. Zoom if we mute it.
You just, yeah, mute audio.
Yeah, I can mute.
Click on that button right there.
I think it.
You're muted. But then they can't.
I think it's because I'm sharing here. I think that has to be muted so that the people online can hear what's coming off my computer. So let's try this and see.
It's working.
Yeah.
And I am in 11th grade.
This is so strange.
We could just send it to the board.
Okay, let's do that.
It's actually not.
I have to mute myself again. There you go. You ready? All right. Oh, I'm sad that you didn't get to see my friend.
What's that chick?
I spend a lot of time at Epic. But we did have, in addition to his actual testimonial, where he was going to talk about the relationships that he had with teachers, the different activities, we did put together a deck as well of some different activities and pictures of the different events that we have been having at Epic, including Military Week, Breakfast with Dr. Young, and Community Service Days, where the students have been going off campus and participating in community service. In particular, Keith Freeman, who is the special education case manager there, has been arranging different events and opportunities for the students so that they can explore post-secondary options and be prepared for when they actually graduate. So you'll see on this slide in particular, that's Mr. Freeman right here. He actually has set up a program called Dress for Success, and usually about twice a month, and I get the invitations to these. They invite speakers into Epic, and they actually have these speakers speak about, you know, different aspects of post-secondary life. So some are speaking about their careers, some of them are speaking about opportunities for post-secondary readiness, some are speaking about opportunities for actual like education. So I think in the upcoming weeks, they have someone coming to talk about HVAC programs and careers. Of course, we have had the folks that came in and talked about what it was like to join the military. They've had guest speakers in classes as well. I was actually there one day with Ms. Mosier's class, and they had he was some level of neuroradiologist or something of the sort. I'm like so scared that I'm getting this term wrong. But she teaches the neuroscience class there, and they had a guest speaker that came in and brought equipment and actually demonstrated for the students what the different types of equipment did. And it was fascinating. The students had a good time, they engaged. And it's really just a wonderful place to be on a regular basis, because I think the students know that they're cared for and that they are being held to an expectation where success is, you know, what we want to get you to. Sometimes we have to have hard conversations for various assorted things, but overall, the day, I think, have been very well placed there. So in the spring, as part of our second high school, what I'm calling like high school night, secondary night, you will also hear additional projections about Epic for the upcoming school year, including, you know, any additional costs that may be associated with it, what it means to continue the program in terms of, you know, finances and budgeting. And there will be, through the Office of Education as well, a determination around whether or not we need to raise the number of seats or perhaps lower them just based upon where students are. But we'll be doing that analysis over the course of the next few months.
Thank you, Ms. Savage. Any questions about the Epic date? Any questions from the public?
I don't want it to go without saying, I know I did some snaps, but what we're hearing is, like, this is transformational work.
Right.
This is, you know, when we think about our mission, providing inspiration and resources so that folks can reach their potential, this is what we're seeing. And the fact that they want to stay there longer than they have to speaks to what you just said. That's like some of the multiple measures. We've got multiple measures here in terms of graduation, right? In terms of transition to high school. Space of belonging, definitely I'm excited to see that we were able to get this up quickly and actually put a model in place rather quickly. And now we have our continuous improvement process that we're applying to Epic as well. So I'm hearing all of these pieces and definitely didn't want it to go without actually stating all of the work that we do this year.
Thank you for that. And I think that's why I'm so disappointed that Brennan's video didn't actually play. He made honor roll.
Wow.
And you know, when you think about kids that you know, need something different, and to see them have and experience that kind of success, it's heartwarming, because I think it totally turned the page for him around, you know, what school could be.
Yeah. And I know we don't want to get started, but I do have a theory. If you muted your mic.
We'll give it one
I'll
more
share
try, because I know
think
we
it
do
would
all
work.
want to see the video.
So you want to mute?
Or a computer mic.
Yes,
My computer mic,
Not that.
not the Zoom mic.
Keep the Zoom mic on.
keep the Zoom mic on.
I
I'll turn off Zoom.
think the Zoom mic,
And
Zoom and
now you
hit
can't.
play and see if it plays.
Okay.
Might not.
One more
Good
shot.
try.
It will be in the presentation. It will be in the.
Are you able to turn up your volume? Audio's like is it?
You can't figure this
So
out.
click the mute on the audio button, and then we're done. I'll stop after.
Video, and it should be embedded, and it should also be linked in the presentation anyway, which are both publicly available. And, we'll figure this out, so the next time we have a video we would like to share, we won't have, the problem. But
I
thank
feel
you.
like I did something new today.
But thank you. I think Mr. Epps covered it well. A lot of amazing work done in a short period of time to really meet a specific need that some of our students have. So thank you to everyone, which I know includes a lot of you to be a part of that. Thank you. And we will move on to the academic calendar update.
Absolutely, and this is actually a very short update because initially, when the academic calendar committee came together, we wanted to present a draft for board consideration at the December meeting. However, we sent out a family survey, and the family survey garnered about 360 households. And in the interest of being inclusive, at 3 p.m. today, we actually figured out how to send the survey out through School Messenger in the hopes that we would get more families involved in actually reviewing the draft calendars that exist. And we also have a calendar for our teachers and our CEA members, a survey, for them teed up so that they will have the next few weeks to, add additional comments based upon their survey. So just in the interest of collecting additional data, we wanted to delay this a little further because 360 households, when we have, 4,300 students in the district, did not seem feasible for us to move forward. So we kind of just slowed it down. So we plan on meeting again as an academic calendar committee in early January after winter break. Based upon when we are going to open and close these surveys, we'll have all the data at that point, and we will be able to then make a recommendation because we wanted to extend out again the timelines for the survey and to collect some additional feedback, particularly from CEA and BEC. And I have had some conversations with some of the students around the calendars. They were very interesting conversations, not what I expected to get. So I think I have to reframe how I'm doing these focus groups because the students are really on some I don't care what you do.
Don't make me go one way or the other.
That's feedback too.
And this feedback too. It was fascinating.
Right.
I was like my teenager friends. So after one of the drafts actually has been chosen, what the Office of Education intends on doing is taking a look at the one that is chosen and then thinking about how we can actually align and lay on top of that the assessment calendar, the report card calendar, and the PD calendar, as well as adding those transition days, because we want to put those things onto the calendar and present that fully flushed out calendar to the board so that families next year will receive all of those things at once. Our next steps after all of this has happened in January, hopefully will be a real serious communication. Because we want to make sure that families actually know a new calendar has been approved and we want to disseminate it in the right ways. I have been speaking often with Kevin Kaufman about how we're getting information out there, what our communication cadences look like, and how families are best receiving it. Because I think it's really important to recognize that, not everything can be shared digitally. Not all families are as digitally astute as we think they are.
Right.
So what does it mean to actually send, for example, a color copy of the calendar home to every kid? So we'll be considering that. So any questions about that?
So many questions. So the January board agenda, you mean the legislative agenda?
Legislative, correct.
So that means there will not be another Ed Affairs between now and that agenda. So my question is, when the final calendar is selected and recommended, will there be an opportunity to communicate that? I know it's been presented, but communicate that briefly to the board, maybe will there be a chance to see it with context of support before the actual legislative meeting?
I will figure that out.
I'm the only one who thinks that's a
We
good
could
idea.
probably do
Yeah.
an information session.
Yeah, that might be a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Because and it's so funny because we've talked about this in the Office of Ed, like this is one of the few school districts where we actually have our education affairs meeting after
Right.
the legislative meeting. So sometimes it kind of is, it presents a logistical challenge.
So when would you be prepared to have that done?
Probably the end of the first week in January. So not the second or
Well, we
third,
could do
but the
that
second.
before retreat too. Because we're all there.
Absolutely, because we'll have all of the feedback at that point in time, the way the surveys are going back, going out, when the information comes in, it's consolidating it into, you know, an actual spreadsheet for us, so that we can generate all kinds of metrics and graphs and so on and so forth.
I do think it's important to see the final selection before. Any other questions or comments about the calendar?
And I appreciate you all taking the time to gather hopefully much more feedback from the community members. Because we know that that's the first thing that will happen is they'll be like, I didn't know.
Right.
And so the more feedback we can get,
Yeah.
the more informed we are about what people really are thinking and from.
And we have actually sent the surveys out in the Sunday newsletter that the communications office sends out, the hashtag This is Cheltenham, that's going out that way. The principals have actually dropped it into the family newsletter, so it is going out that way. But just given the response rate, we were trying to figure out, like, is there an additional mechanism by which we should send this out? Because it didn't feel like it was enough feedback. So.
I've certainly seen it shared in all of those ways, shared by parent groups, so I think that we've maximized as much as we can in this additional email today, hopefully. I also appreciate hearing the look to the communications plan for how we'll make sure, you know, folks know, because there will be some pretty big changes, just shifts with where our half days fall and things like that.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
yes, I think families will be happy to have all the information and all the communication around that. Any other questions or comments from the board, from the public? All right, and with that, we thank you, Ms. Savage, and we will move on to, I believe, our fifth and final topic of the evening,
Yes.
which I think is pretty impressive for 1 hour and 4 minutes.
Oh, wow, not bad at all, yes.
We haven't had the last one, you're right. We're going to the 10.
Well, we just wanted to give you some brief strategic plan updates in the context of the Educational Affairs Committee meeting, knowing as well that we will be putting together a graphic and a report that has some more detailed information, a written report that will come to the board in January. But just from a high level, we wanted to go through each of the pillars that the Office of Education has been supporting and just let you know kind of where we are in progress, because we did share in, I believe that was August, where we were in terms of the strategic plan, what we had done during the 23-24 school year and what we have planned for 24-25. So just wanted to give you an update around what's going on and where we are. So for Portrait of a Graduate in particular, we're continuing to vet the Portrait of a Graduate draft that was created by the smaller committee. And we have had multiple focus groups at this point, including the council, the Curriculum Instruction and Professional Development Council, that is the joint partnership between the administration and the CEA. We actually walked through that as well with them. And the next steps is really to continue the focus groups, but we want to develop a district-wide survey that will go out around the Portrait of a Grad. We wanted to make sure as well that we were finished with the academic calendar survey before we sent the survey out. So kind of gave us a little pause. But the assumption is that we will send the Portrait of a Grad survey out in January. At this point, we're taking the feedback from all of the focus groups and refining it a bit so that the portrait that we send out incorporates all of the feedback that we've collected so far. Next is teaching and learning, and I will let Dr. Riley chime in.
All right.
Did I catch you off guard? I'm sorry.
A little bit, that's all right. So we've been doing a lot of work around the curriculum development. every opportunity we get with early dismissal Wednesdays, professional development days, we can bring teachers together and talk horizontally and or vertically. And we do have a mixture of both of those things happening. We take advantage of those to allow them the opportunity to converse around curriculum that we have developed, curriculum that still needs to be developed, with a particular focus around common assessments. So as common assessments are being designed, we are implementing them right away. So we're using those currently as the teachers get a chance to put them together and talk about them together. They're administering those to students. The next bullet point is we sent out a request for proposal to identify a consultant that's going to help us design a protocol around adoption and implementation of curriculum resources. We brought them in, interviewed each of those that had submitted a proposal, and so that's going to be forthcoming next month, right?
Then I can speak to the CSI work. The CSY work is very interesting because it is continuous school improvement, but we actually had a meeting with our contact at the MCIU, I guess yesterday? And the state is rolling out what they call integrated MTSS, where they're looking at an MTSS process that integrates both academics and behavior, and that the intervention grids and the models now take into account both aspects of both academics and behavior when we're looking at students. So it's going to require us to actually go back and take a look at our own intervention manuals, our own materials, and make sure that it is integrated in the way that the state is suggesting. But that is work that we are happy to do and that we've already started looking. We have FastBridge implementation going on, and FastBridge is an important part of that MTSS piece because it is the universal screener. When we took a look at the implementation data and the usage data, we're happy to say that the vast majority of our students have taken FastBridge in both English and math. And we will be sending score reports. Well, we will be providing families with score access and reports in January through Lincoln in particular, and a letter around that has gone on as well. We're also continuing to utilize the Penn Literacy Network in kindergarten and first grade in particular, with a heavy focus on strategies to support building literacy skills for our youngest learners. And of course, EPIC was one of those big things within the pillar that you just got the report on. Ms. Keene, did you want to speak to local support?
Okay, so we've been working this year to continue to support our students' social, emotional, and mental health needs. As stated, we looked at our PACE data from last school year, and we noticed there's an uptick in vaping. And so in order to be preventative, we did partner with David Fialco from the Council of Southeast Pennsylvania, and he offered workshops. I believe Mr. Metcalf and Dr. Hammond spoke to this. He came and did presentations for our high school and our middle school students in an effort to be preventative. And then I believe that Dr. Hammond is also going to be bringing somebody in later on in the school year to drive that point home. I think it's lost on our students the actual impact that it can have, because we're not quite sure what's in these devices. And it's having long-lasting impacts on their mental health state. So I think the more they know, the better choices that they will actually make. We implemented our universal screener for internal and externalizing behaviors. We have full participation from all of our schools and all of our teachers, so that was really helpful for our MTSS teams to then review that data as they're looking to provide the behavioral supports for our students. And then we utilized our grant work to put in place the counseling support at EPIC, and then also brought in the addition of We Are Hope, which is a clinical therapist that is in the building every day to meet with our students. Just kind of getting our footing with that and referrals, but I think as the months kind of progress, they will have a full caseload pretty soon. And just working out the kinks of how to make the referrals and connecting with that overall organization, but still something very beneficial for our students there. We have a young men's mentoring group that is operating out of our high school, EPIC, and then we are looking to expand that partnership to Elkins Park. And then we have a girls mentoring group that's facilitated by 2 of our staff to make the distinction. That is a Saturday girls mentoring group that Ms. Savage had the privilege of meeting with them today and got an earful of all the wonderful things that they would like to change and improve at the high school. So, a couple of things that we're working with. Thank you.
All right, so for pillar 4, diversity, equity, belonging, and inclusion, we have had a few very interesting professional learning opportunities for our staff, including in October, when we brought the Mazzoni Center in to actually talk about the lexicon around our LGBTQIA+ students. It was met honestly with a lot of success, and we were very surprised at how well the survey data came back. There has been a request to repeat that session with some of our additional staff because we primarily reserved that for our teachers and our paraprofessionals in October. So we're investigating now whether or not we can bring it back for our BEC staff, some of our maintenance staff, and just make sure that everybody's on the same page. The other thing that is really important about the DEBI is we have reestablished a true functioning committee. We meet on a bi-weekly basis. We have revised and revisited the racial equity statement, goals, and action plan that had existed, I guess, from about 2018 to 2021. So those documents have been revised based upon the current strategic plan. And last but not least, we now have we have cultural proficiency teacher leaders in every building. And we are convening with them for about 1.5 hours to 2 hours on January 17th, I think is the first large meeting. And the intent is to bring them together, kind of baseline them in the work that has been done, and then look at the professional learning arc for the remainder of the year. On February 14th in particular, which is our next full day professional development day, we are making sure that we have a number of offerings that actually speak to and focus on the DEBI work that the district has not just done in the past, but how are we going to do this work now and then push it forward, paying very close attention to how it's manifesting in our curriculum. Ms. Collins previously worked with a group to make sure that it was embedded in the lenses that we used when we were building curriculum, and I think that has been incredibly effective, and we want to make sure we're continuing to do work on that. And then last but not least, pillar 5 is our culture and climate for student success. I'm happy to say that we actually have been training, well, we've sent a couple of our special education supervisors to become trained as trainers in safety care. And they have in turn been training teams here in the district in different schools. And this is very necessary because it requires us, when we have situations where we have to break up fights or when we have students that, may have some explosive behaviors, it's very important that if we ever are going to touch a student, we do so in a way that is proven to be effective, but also incredibly safe. And we're making sure that our staff are safety care trained for that purpose. So you might have heard of some of this going on already, but we're making sure all of our administrators, our special education staff in particular, are getting safety care trained. Also, PBIS programming is exploding all over the district, which we're very happy about. We also have been in contact with the MCIU because we have been trying to move our schools between tiers. So PBIS in particular has a tiered model very similar to MTSS, and a lot of our schools sent teams to the PBIS Implementers Forum, and they are now in the process of examining their frameworks to make sure that they can apply for additional designations through the PBIS process. So we also introduced stipended PBIS teams at all levels. So where before it was kind of spotty around if we had a PBIS team and how many members it had, who was doing what, now we have solidified teams at every school, and that has actually facilitated and helped the work move along. And I think it has facilitated as well some of the dips in referrals and incidents that we've seen. And last but not least, we have district plan, the district school safety plan has actually, no, let me say that correctly. The district emergency operations plan has been revised and reissued And the schools at this point in time are also looking at their school safety plans so that they can incorporate any of the changes that were made to the district's operation plan so that everything is aligned. So that's the work that's going on there. I did not include pillars I did not include 6 and 7 at this point in time because, you know, they don't usually come to ed affairs. But I did just want to make sure that you had an update around what we have been working.
Thank you, Ms. Savage. Any questions or comments from the board on the strategic plan?
I know this is not detailed, nor is this a request, if this isn't a current topic. But I know before we portrait of a graduate, there was some rumblings around like a virtual backpack idea all leading up to that. So is that still part of the conversation?
I mean, in my head it is.
Oh,
I am hoping that we will get there. I think the larger issue with the portrait of a grad work is getting a community to agree to, you know, these 5 or 6 or 7 competencies or skill sets that we want our students to have is a long and burdensome task, right?
Yeah.
Because you want to make sure that people feel heard and that we have some level of consensus, but consensus across so many stakeholders might be hard. So in thinking about that and how we proceed, like the process that we wanted to take over the course of this year would end in June, at which point we would actually come up with the schematic or the graphic that really elevates what that portrait of a grad is for Cheltenham School District. And then we would start pulling that into all of the backward mapping around curriculum, our PBIS systems, making sure these things align, and creating then that virtual backpack for kids.
Thanks for sharing. And then excited to hear that the access to Fast Bridge data is coming for families in January. Just if we kind of pause as a parent with of 4th graders, and you know, the teachers talking about Fast Bridge, we're getting our PD about it and things like that. So it's helpful. I'm encouraged to hear that. We've been hearing it in the classroom that they're using it more and more. And so that next step seems to be like, as a parent, what does it look like from our view as well? So excited to hear that that's coming very soon. The We Are Hope. I know some of our contracts are like have a limit to how much we can spend on them, which then means like a cap on students and things like that. Is that how this contract is set up as well, where there might be a cap on students? And so I guess if we get to that cap, is that like a wait list, or like what happens if we get to the cap for We Are Hope? I guess
There's only a set amount of sessions, so yes, the students will be on the wait list. Probably so they will be able to take that.
Nice. And how often does that, is that just based on need? How often those spots open up?
Absolutely. And what Mr. Choice does is actually engage with the families, and there's a twofold piece to that contract as well, because We Are Hope is providing the clinical supports over at Epic, but they also are going to provide some professional development sessions for our staff. So on February 14th, for example, we're planning right now, we're in conversations with Sean Perry to come to the district and actually do a session for our high school teachers and possibly some parents around the country. So we're looking at how we can provide these different professional learning experiences and just, you know, not just for the teachers, but also for families. And We Are Hope is part of that mix. There's a portion of the contract dedicated to that.
That's awesome here. And I actually didn't realize it was for Epic exclusive.
It's for
So
Epic
then we should
exclusive.
probably get to that point where it's like, how much do we want to wait this? Oh, okay, good. That's so, all right, that rearranges that. That's helpful to know. And then the cultural proficiency, you said teachers, cultural proficiency.
Cultural proficiency teacher leaders.
Teacher lead, okay, that's the part I missed. I know it
Yes.
was something. But yeah, that sounds like an evolution as well. I think we've been hearing about like the PD, and I know I previously asked like, well, what, like conceptually, it seems like there was some work done. And so like, what does that look like next? And so it sounds like this is one of those next steps, actually, like getting the in-house experts to always be there as a resource. So that's, you know, that's encouraging.
Absolutely. All of the strategic plan pillars for the Office of Ed now have teacher leaders that are associated with those particular pillars in the school setting. So the hope and the idea is that we are norming here at central administration, norming with those teachers, and then the message is getting out into the schools in a different way, because we have teacher leaders that are, you know, helping to facilitate some of this work. And Dr. Scriven and I also have been talking about like pipelining talent and what that means. and making sure that we're providing opportunities for teachers that want to grow and learn professionally, and the stipend and positions are a good way to do that. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? From the board members? Any questions or comments from the public? Well, are there any questions that we missed from anything in the presentation? I think we covered it all. I think given we covered 5 topics and we did it in an hour and 20 minutes, but I also do not feel like that meant we did a disservice to any of the topics. I think we covered everything well and had time for questions and conversations. So thank you, Ms. Savage, to you and your team for an awesome night and lots of good presentations. I think I speak for all of us when I say we're excited about the work that is being done and looking forward to the future updates that we're going to get in the coming months. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Have a second. Second. Ms. Loman, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Happy holidays.